that we are living. Okay, good. And today, as Milena already said, we're going to talk a little bit about the research that we've been doing in the past years. We have been busy with that for over 5 years now, and it's very nice to also be able to share some of these results and also maybe share knowledge with other projects. So love to also hear what you have been up to and if you have similar or very different experiences. So where are we? We are in the south of Spain. We are in a place that is called the Altiplano, which is the highlands of Spain. We are on an altitude of around 1,100 meters, which means we're high and dry, semi-arid to arid. We have very little rain, and when it comes all at once. So we have a lot of need for restoration, and we have a lot of challenges here in our area. We are very degraded, eroded, very low organic matter. It's a Mediterranean climate. We also have a lot of difficulties with depopulation, and also there's a lot of monocultures here in the area. So biodiversity is decreasing. People are also leaving because the lands have gotten so bad that they cannot farm on them anymore. And that is really something that we're working on La Junquera and the Regeneration Academy. Let's see if I can go to the next. Yes. So here you see our farm. We are, besides a farm, also a little village. I mean, we call it a little village. It has 15 ruins of houses, of which we just rebuilt 5. And we are now 15 inhabitants. So I would say that is a village. And we're growing. So we're one of the few villages in the area that are actually growing. And over the years, we've really become a hub for regenerative agriculture and knowledge sharing on regenerative agriculture. On La Junquera, we have a lot of different crops. So we started out 15 years ago with only grains. Now we have grains, almonds, pistachios. We have some natural area. We have apples. We have aromatics. We have a vegetable garden. We have cows. I see the vineyard is not on there, but it's very important. We have a vineyard. And we're also now managing other lands. So we're also working with other farms that we're transforming from conventional to regenerative organic. And our students are also helping with that. So just to give you an idea of what does that actually mean, regenerative organic. In our case, we're very busy improving soil, water, and biodiversity, and also the social structure of this area. So, for example, we use swales, vegetation strips, key line. We make loads of ponds to increase the water uptake of the soil, and we have our cows doing holistic grazing. But they also escape a lot, so sometimes it's grazing everywhere at once. So this is still something in development. And we're doing many more things, which I don't have time because I only have 7 minutes to explain everything that we do. Let's see. And with the Regeneration Academy, we are very integrated in all of this farm work. So we use education as a tool to regenerate the land. We have seen that over the years, many students would love an experience on the farm. And we've developed a program to actually help the students understand better what's happening, but also the students really have an impact on the land. So many times the students do experiments that will help us improve our transition, improve what we're doing. I think around 70% of the things that the students have been working on has actually been implemented, and we're also scaling up many of those experiments. So students have really big impact on the land, and also we've seen that over the years, work that the students maybe have been doing 5 years ago, we're now implementing also on other farms, which is very nice. And it's something that we couldn't have done if we were only 2 people. And now, because we have groups of sometimes 8 students, we can scale up our impact a lot. But that's not the only thing that we do. We work also with European projects. So we're involved in projects focusing on soil health. We're focused also, we have a project where we work with other European farms on sharing knowledge between farms. We do short courses, like crash courses of 1 week. We work with rural youth. So there's many other things in the academy that we're working on, because we do believe that we have to work on different levels to really make a change. These are our 4 main programs. So we have the research program where the students come from. We have an holistic course for young unemployed people. We have the Viva el Campo program that is really focused on high schools, local high schools, and getting them acquainted with what is climate change, what is pollution, what does happen to the water when you use it all, what are other ways of farming. So they come here, they have a day on the farm, we go there to the high schools, we do activities with them, and it's been really successful, and many of them also return later, one way or another. And then we have the crash courses. We have a Spanish crash course of 1 week, and we also have an English speaking crash course. So I already told you a little bit about why our students are so important. They also really help us with monitoring, and that is something I haven't really mentioned yet. But for us, the monitoring is very important, because we do many things, and as farmers will probably know, you kind of see if it works or if it doesn't work. But of course, that is very difficult to then share with other people if we don't have the data to back up what we actually already know. And I think that's also where the students really come in. So they help us to visualize and to write down why things work or why things do not work. And that is also something that they will share with us in a little bit. So the first one is Enya. Enya, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can, let's see. Oh, I'm going to share more screens. No, I'm not. Yes. And Enya is going to tell us something about insect biodiversity in almond orchards.
Yes, my name is Enya Ramirez. I'm working in DLL as a climate risk consultant. So I did my thesis research in La Junquera about insect biodiversity in almond cultivation. So the aim of the study is to analyze the importance of beneficial insects in almond production. I focus on biological control and pollination. And where in our favorite place, La Junquera farm. And why? Because I wanted to communicate the importance of these essential services that insect provides to enhance almond productivity and make cultivation more sustainable. How I conduct the research? By answering my research questions. So one was what insect species are relevant for biological control and pollination in the almond production. As a first step, I did literature review to identify the almond varieties, the list of insect species identified in the Spanish Mediterranean, and I focus on insects that pollinate almond and almond pests. And why almond pests? Because those pests are linked to biological control services by insects. So basically, I did a questionnaire online and in person to know what are the species that pollinate almond, and also what are the pests that farmers can find in this cultivation. So the second question was, what is the current effect on almond production? I made literature review on the benefit of pollination and biological control on farm systems with a focus on almond production. So basically, I analyzed combined information, and the first results were that in La Junquera farm, they had 5 varieties of nut, and Also, the almond pests were identified in the region of Andalusia and Murcia. So basically, insects, pests can attack different part of the almond. For example, we have pest called a wasp that can eat the nut of the almond. So also aphids or moths or another larvae can eat the leaf, and beetles can eat the root of the almond. So basically, when I identify those pests, I could identify the insects that can reduce this pest, identify 20 natural enemies that can reduce the potential of the impact of the pests. And this is very specific because, for example, I will explain that aphids, the natural enemies can be ladybugs, hoverflies, the larvae, and also wasps. And basically, those can reduce potentially the population of these pests. Regarding the pollination, identify 30 native and non-native pollinator insects. So basically, for example, ladybugs and hoverflies can act as a pollinator, but also can act as a pest controller. To answer the second question, what are the effects of insect pollination in almond trees, basically was made by literature review, and I identified that native pollination can bring significant benefit to almond tree than applied pollinators like non-native pollinators. Regarding the almond fruit set, is 20% in applied pollinator, can increase 20% in applied pollinator, 30% in a mixed condition, and 50% with native. For applied pollination, can increase almond production by 60%, while native pollinators can have a positive effect of 40%. Regarding biological control, different beneficial insects can potentially reduce the pests. For example, wasps has higher parasitic rate. That means that it can combat the pests, very specific, in 50%. So this can reduce the damage of 20% in a 37% of nut infection. For example, ladybugs can eat like 400 million aphids, and in total in their life cycle can eat like 5,000 aphids in one cycle. Regarding hoverflies, in the larval stage can reduce the population of aphids by 40%. The larvae of lacewing can eat more than 200 aphids per week. So this is like the effect of biological control of almonds. So the conclusion of this research and discussion is that identify 50 insects that can provide benefit to almond production. So there is more research in natural biological control, so I couldn't find information on this specific topic. There is a discussion between scientific name and very specific names with the farms. So this need to be combined in order to provide more insight. The insects identified are likely to increase the quality and quantity of almond seeds. So there is a disagreement in use of the native, non-native, and mix of pollinator and biological control. So this is the main insights on the research.
Thank you, Enya. Very nice to hear from you again. And just for the rest of you all, a bit of a following up on the work of Enya is that we have been very busy with the results of her research, because basically what her research showed is that biological pest control can have a very important can be very important in the farm. So we have been looking into ways on how to improve habitat for insects, for pollinators, and we do this by planting hedges and borders all over the farm. So on every plot, we are now planting hedges. we have tried many different types of plants in the hedges, but mainly we are looking into planting the ones that can host these beneficial insects and pollinators. This is a very slow process. So, for example, the left upper photo that you think, where is the hedge? This is a 3-year-old hedge. Probably this goes a lot faster if it would rain and there is a lot more water available. Nevertheless, the one on the right is, for example, 4 years old, and there you really do see a lot more hedge. And we do see that it has a big effect, because one of the last students of 2022 saw a 30% increase in certain insects and pollinators compared to non-planted hedges, let's say just borders of fields. So we're very happy with those results. All right, I think it is time for Bart.
Yes,
Bart, you can share your screen.
Share my screen.
Good.
Is this visible? Yes. All right. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bart Huismans. I did an internship at La Junquera in 2019, so quite a while back already. Before my internship, I did a bachelor's in earth sciences in Amsterdam, and after that I worked abroad on a farm in Mongolia for over a year. And then when I got back and I started studying again hydrology, I wanted to do something in my thesis that was practical as well. So that's how I ended up at La Junquera. The title of my thesis was Quantifying the Effects of Contour Trenching, a hill slope scale case study in Murcia. And I'll give you a little bit of background with that. Yannick already gave a little bit of introduction into the region, but as he said, it's quite prone to land degradation. It's a dry region, and there's a lot of erosion, and that's caused by two main factors. Firstly, the environmental setting, so the hilly landscape and the climate characterized by high intensity precipitation events. And during those high intensity precipitation events, you get a lot of rainfall in a short amount of time, and then the precipitation rate can exceed the rate at which the soil can take up the water, the infiltration rate, and then you get a runoff, and runoff, basically water flowing over the land surface, means that you lose the water to areas downstream, but it's not conserved on your plot where you grow your crops, and it means you get erosion. And this situation is exacerbated by the agricultural practices. So the monocultures, the big plots with bare land, which make it easy for surface runoff to occur. So that's the situation: loss of soil fertility and loss of water. And a way to, or a possible solution to this, and that's also quite an old solution as well, is contour trenching, where you basically dig trenches or swales or ditches, it doesn't matter how you call them, along points of equal elevation through the landscape, so along contour lines. And then when surface runoff does occur during those precipitation events, the trenches, they absorb the water, they allow it to infiltrate locally on the plot where you are cultivating your crops. And because water is intercepted, you limit the runoff velocities, which means that you limit the erosion rates. So the aim of my research was to quantify the effects of such contour trench systems, both in terms of soil moisture content and in terms of erosion rates. And my research consisted of 4 steps. It started off with field work. So I wanted to look at what the infiltration characteristics of the plots of La Junquera were. Because in order to evaluate a trench, you need to design a trench. And in order to design a trench, you need to know how much water it needs to store. And that's dependent on soil type and those kind of things. So that's what I did in step 1. I found a lot of textures, a lot of different infiltration characteristics. So I also made different trench designs for different types of soils on the farm. That's step 2. And then in step 3, I put those designs into a hydrological model called HYDRIS, where I simulated rainfall events and looked at the time after those rainfall events and to see how soil moisture content develops and where the water goes that you catch with one of those trenches. And then as a final step, I did some erosion modeling to see what the effects on that aspect are. I'll jump straight into the results from the modeling because time is limited. As I said, I made many trench designs and I did many model simulations, but this is an example. It's sort of an average example of what results the model showed. On the left hand, you see a hill slope without trenches. On the right hand, you see one with a trench. And the colors, like the more blue it gets, means the more wet. So this simulates what happens after a rainfall event. You can see on a slope without trench, I'll play it a few times because it's quite short. You don't see a lot happening. Most of the rain just flows away over the surface. And when you have a trench, you can see that local soil moisture contents are significantly higher, especially in the first few days. But you can also see from this image, or you can question how far this water sort of moves through the zone in between trenches where your crops grow. So to look a bit more into that or have some more detailed results, I also inserted observation nodes in the model, which are these little red points. And they basically show for those points in the root zone, so in the top 40 centimeters of the soil in between the trenches, how soil moisture content develops over the, in this case, in this bottom graph, the 100 days after the rainfall event. And you see the black line in the graph, that's the situation without a trench. And then you can see that for, well, up to the red line, so up to about 2 meters 15, you get increases in soil moisture content. And after that, they become negligible. So on a trench, both sides, 2 meters 15. And you see the closer, naturally, the closer you get to a trench, the higher the increase in soil moisture content is. So to conclude, I think my simulation showed that in terms of soil moisture content, there is an increase. It's limited to about 2 meters away from the trenches, so the sphere of influence is limited, but there is definitely a significant increase. I also evaluated those increases in soil moisture content in terms of root water uptake. So if there would grow, if plants would grow there, how much more water would be available for those plants? And that simulation showed that there is an increase of about 20% in root water uptake. So that's positive, but on the other side, because you dig the trenches, you lose a strip of land where you can cultivate crops, which in my trench designs was about 15 to 20% of surface area. So in that sense, you store more water, but you lose a little bit of land that you can cultivate, which sort of cancel each other out. But this didn't take into account other crops that you could, for example, plant in the hedges, or you have the trench. Sorry, hedges was the last presentation. In my models, you had the earth that you excavate from the trench, you put next to it, and that could also be used for trees, or maybe for hedges, or for other crops. So you could still utilize that the trench itself, which then would result in a higher root water uptake. I also did the erosion modeling. I didn't show the results there, but they showed very significant reductions of up to 90% if trenches are built in close enough to each other. So if you put them at like 10-15 meters, you get really significant erosion reduction rates. Then I had some points of discussion, maybe also for the breakout room. So one point is climate change. With climate change, it gets more dry and high intensity rainfall events can occur more often. So I believe that in those terms, the potentials of contour trenching could only increase with such a change. And secondly, I would be very curious into the effects on a regional level. If all farmers or more farmers in a region would adopt this technique, then you could also get like groundwater aquifer replenishment, or then you can get effects on a regional scale, which could, come next to the results on a field level. And I have a little video here, which shows the result of my thesis, because paperwork is nice, but for me this was nicer. So at the end of my thesis, we also, according to the design that I made, implemented some trenches. And now, so it's been 3-4 years. Now I'm back in the Netherlands. I work at Boerenverstand, which is a consultancy company, small consultancy company, where we also look at how to help farmers in a practical way and not through complicated technologies, but with Boerenverstand, which is the Dutch term for like farmers' wisdom or farmers' logic. So that's what I do now. And then I have this slide for Yannick, which I was also happy to see, because the number 60 was new to me.
Yes, thank you, Bart. Very nice presentation, and I think also really nice to see indeed visually how the water spreads out because of this swill. Because of Bart's research and the research of a couple of other students, we have been implementing swills all over the farm. As you can see on the left top, this is a plot where we have put 4 swills. There we had so much erosion that we basically did not have any yield from the grains. So it was considered a lost plot, and now because of the swills we don't have erosion anymore. So there's also no destruction, because when it rains there's no gullies forming. And I think something that Bart hasn't mentioned yet, but what we have seen over the years is one of the very big side effects of adding swills to your land is that the tractor drivers cannot till downhill anymore. This seems like something maybe for us that is very obvious, but here in this area, people still tend to till downhill, and it's very difficult to get that habit out. But the swill makes it impossible to till downhill. So there you really have a tool to make them till on contour, which makes a huge difference. Something we've also seen over the years is that swills tend to work better on clay soils than on sandy soils, because we've also made a couple on sandy soils and they've never been full or had any water or any sediments, just because the sandy soils by themselves don't erode that much. On the lower side, on the left, you see a swill full of water, so one that is actually working. And generally, you also see that the swills that are full of water stay full for maybe 3 weeks. So it's really moist a lot longer than on other areas. And even if the swill is not working as a water reservoir, we've seen that it's still working very well as a biodiversity corridor. So generally, we put the swills on bigger plots that we have, and we see over the years how many animals make use of that swill as their highway from one place to another. Generally, during the summer months, they fill up with high grasses. You see loads of rodents, foxes, wild boars use them. lots of birds nest in them. So even when they don't work as we planned, they still have a very interesting function for us. So that's why we will continue putting them wherever we can. Also, something Bart was telling was that indeed you lose some of your cultivatable land, but in our case, what we do is we do intercropping. So when we have a grain field, only grains, we make a swale, and on the lower side of the swale, we plant, for example, almonds. And then you have the income of the almonds to balance the loss of land that you have from losing the land towards the swale. So that is some information about the swales. And I think now we go to our last alumni student, Lisa. Lisa, are you there?
I am.
Good.
I will share my screen too. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Good. Let me move all of the Zoom things to my right. All right. So my name is Lisa. I studied at the Regeneration Academy in 2020. So that is also 3 years ago already. And I really like storytelling. So my thesis was about creating culture. And my aim was really to develop a methodology for inducing a paradigm shift from conventional to regenerative agriculture. Okay, so what does that mean? Basically, the current cultural paradigm is conventional agriculture, comes from the Green Revolution and industrializing agriculture, lots of technocratic solutions. And obviously, we would like to go to a more nature-based solution, which regenerative agriculture is. And I'm saying obviously, but it's not so obvious. And that is why I started my study by looking at the why of it all. So let me see. Yeah, so I really wanted part of my research to focus on the greater why. So in a lot of research, the humanities are not really involved, especially environmental research, which I think is really a shame because there's a lot of very rich information on why we are doing what we are doing. And that can be found in, for example, environmental and intergenerational ethics. So that has to do kind of with the way that we view ourselves with regard to nature. Do we see ourselves as a part of nature, or do we see ourselves apart from nature? So not as a part of nature. And I think that paradigm is very important. So how do we view nature? And even if we view nature as separate from our own existence, then at least we have intergenerational ethics to kind of build upon. So we want to leave the world in a state where our children and grandchildren can also live prosperous lives, or at least as prosperous as our own lives. And that is why I wanted to do research on kind of the inspiration part of the agricultural transition. So what I wanted to do was basically create the story of La Junquera, but not only of La Junquera, also of the Regeneration Academy and of Camp Altiplano, which is the ecosystem restoration camp that is based on the farm. And the way that I wanted to do that was, a lot of stories are pretty incidental. So often with landscape approaches, there's a lot of inspirational content and we like pick a case study and we use that as a story. But what I wanted to do was really go from the beginning to the end of why La Junquera exists. So what are the goals of the farm and eventually what the impact would be. And for this, I used the theory of change methodology, which is more often used in policy making to look at whether an intervention and how an intervention would theoretically create impact. But it's really great for storytelling because it can really create a whole structure of a story, a whole narrative from start to finish. So I conducted some interviews with the people from the farm, amongst which Yannick, but also Alfonso. And from there, I made stories. And for that, I used another methodology, and I used sensory storytelling. I guess all storytelling is kind of sensory in a way. It always includes the senses, so sight, smell, taste, touch, and sound, but it also includes mood and what is your connection to a place. So what I asked, for example, was how people felt when stepping outside of their door at La Junquera, for example. And what is also important in these kind of, oh, sorry, I see there's a tag on my presentation. It's gone now. And what is also really important in these stories is learning points and turning points. So what in every story, you kind of have a moment that grabs your attention or that can turn a story around. So I really looked for kind of those moments, and I will just quickly go to the results, which is, for example, I made a little story based on a quote from Alfonso, which is the following. I will just read it to you. Sometimes I have a feeling inside my belly that fills me up. And I remember going to religion class, and there were teachers that called this feeling God moments, when you felt God. And I am not religious anymore, but I think that that is the only word I've heard for it. And now I think I have a lot of those moments. And I really thought that this quote captured a lot of what a transition is about, which is that you go from one end to the other, and when you come to the other end, you feel kind of this fulfillment when you step outside and you see what you've achieved. So this kind of storytelling can really help, I think, move a transition along. Obviously, I am not sure because there was only the case study of La Junquera, and I would love to do this, for example, also on a conventional farm, because I think it would be very interesting to see why conventional farmers stick to their tradition. But that is kind of what I did at La Junquera. And right now I work at Eco-Agriculture Partners, which is kind of related also to the landscape approach, very related to the landscape approach. And we work right now on a project called 1,000 Landscapes for a Billion People, where we try to give landscape partnerships the tools to manage their land more holistically. And for that, we kind of use a similar framework as Common Land uses. Common Land is also one of our core partners in that initiative. I was thinking we are developing things like curricula about these 5 elements. So if people are interested in what we do, they can always contact me on the email address on the screen. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Lisa. Later, if people would like to learn more about what Lisa is doing during the breakout rooms, they can also check in with her. So following up on the work of Lisa, we have been working on our storytelling. We also have done some open days that worked very, very well. We had 100 people during our last open day, which got a bit out of hand, to be honest. It's like not planned to have so many people, but this was a nice, nice experience. And during this open day, what we also did was get all these generations together. So we had kids, we had students, we had grandparents, we had everyone together sharing stories. And I think especially also giving people a little taste of the community feeling of the life on the farm really was enhanced by having food. So we had a really nice lunch, really nice paella. So in the end, people stayed for 3 hours longer than we thought, and we made some music and shared stories. And I think this has worked very well, and there were a lot of people that were very happy to share some of this, share an experience on a farm, and get a little bit more of this feeling of what it could be, what it could look like. So thank you, Lisa, for your work. Now I'm going to give the voice to Milena, I think. I don't know if I hear you.
Oh, I'm here now. Sorry, I was muted. All right, so what we're going to do now, yeah, you can stop sharing, perfect. What we're going to do now is we actually are really good in time. This never happens, but that's very exciting because that means we might have a little bit more time for the breakout rooms. I'm going to create breakout rooms, one per student. I see there were lots of questions in the chat, specifically around swales. Well, now you have the opportunity to ask Bart these questions directly, and he can also answer them, and also questions that are there for Lisa and Enya, and Yannick as well. So there are going to be 4 breakout rooms, one for the Regeneration Academy, where you can ask Yannick a little bit more specific questions about the academy, and then there will be one breakout room for Enya's research and biodiversity, one for Bart and one for Lisa, and you can choose the breakout rooms that you want to go to. We are currently around 50 to 60 people in the chat, in the Zoom, sorry. So if you see that there's already about 20 people in one group, go to a different group. You can always just listen into their questions, and you can leave and go. You can hop between groups as well. But it's just nice if there's not too many people in one group, because otherwise it will get a little bit too much. I will stay in the main room. So if anyone has questions or technical issues, you can go back into the main room and I'll be there. All right. So I'll open up all the rooms, and all right. This is my nightmare. I always get this. I always get this wrong. Sorry. I knew this was going to happen. Okay. People can join, right? Ah, fantastic. Okay, it all worked out. Great.
Milena, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
How does it work with recording? Which breakout room is recorded, or is none of them recorded?
That's a very good question.
So the recording, I will actually pause it now because it's not needed, but we only record the main room. And if we want to record the breakout rooms, there needs to be in that breakout room who does the recording.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jesper. Yeah, I think that's also something that I find also very inspiring. The sort of the experimenting, the testing, the feeling, and the moving forward, and the love and energy that it takes, right, to also continue doing that. Thank you for saying that. Anyone else?
Yeah. Well, again, this is Sergio. Just to complete the question, got cut. No, I think from a local point of view, I'm in Spanish. I was thinking about the very interesting experience you have in Almeria, and I was interested specifically in how you deal, if you deal with local authorities, because I think it's extremely important for this kind of new region, for many people new agriculture to be successful. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm personally cannot really answer specifically how dealing with local authorities is managed in southern Spain, Alvalao, but I would say that a big something that we always say it's really important to come to sort of a common vision and common understanding, and share knowledge, and also share come to sort of a joint understanding of what we all want to achieve. And finding the right language also to communicate with different stakeholders. I think, yeah, maybe somebody else also has something to add to that. Otherwise, any comment?
I think for us from La Junquera, it's always challenging to deal with local authorities. First of all, because they change every 4 years in our case. So every 4 years, you're either dealing with the right or the left, and you want to keep having an impact. So we try to stay neutral. We try to invite everyone from every single side to come to the farm and to experience what we're doing. And luckily for us, we are neutral enough that everybody can kind of find themselves as liking it. So for us, that helps. But yeah, it's challenging because especially in the south of Spain, there is not always a very big focus on regenerative or organic or sustainable mindsets. And yeah, we are still a niche.
Thank you, I
to say the
understand.
least.
Thank you, Nick. Anyone else?
Yeah, maybe one thing that I could add from our breakout room is that from my thesis, you focus on one measure or one regenerative practice, but that you should always sort of keep the whole set of principles in mind. And of course, that it's good to sort of zoom into one specific practice and investigate it, but don't lose track of all the other practices there are and how they, how there are positive links and impacts between those practices. So in reality, there might be more positive effects than focusing on a single measure might show.
Thank you, Bart, for adding that. So the complexity as well. Right. Anyone else? We still have about 3 minutes. Maybe somebody can also share about the experience. What was it like for you to have these discussions in the breakout rooms? Was it insightful? You can also just, share that if you want to.
What can we do for you organized meetups, webinar, and also inspiring talks? What can we do as we're not involved in your network yet, or no people are not involved yet? What can we do to grow it?
An excellent question. A big part that everyone can do to contribute to the network or to help is to share any kind of experiences or knowledge that you might have about various expertise or things that are relevant for landscape restoration, right? And since landscape restoration is also inherently complex, you have all sorts of different stakeholders involved, all sorts of different topics that it touches on, not just biodiversity, but also how to manage people and how to create community or how to economics. All of these topics are as important for landscape restoration. We all know this. So the biggest part I think that people can play in really growing the network and also helping us all have the impact that we want to have is to share our experiences, share knowledge, share resources. If anyone else has something to add to that, maybe you also know what else is good to help the network. And I also would say, actually, getting your hands dirty and doing a lot of the restoration, like really, getting involved, going to a farm, seeing how regenerative agriculture what it actually is, what it takes to restore landscapes. I think doing it and seeing it helps a lot also to become an activist.
Hear, hear.
Thanks, Mariska. Anyone else? We have 5 minutes. Otherwise, I'll just maybe say a few things that are coming up. But if anybody else has something important to share or wants to say something, one last chance.
I want to thank everyone for joining. It was really a pleasure having you all here to share experiences, to learn from each other. I hope we can do this more often. I hope indeed we can learn from other people, from other farms, that we stay open to see how indeed different similar practices might have very different ways of implementation, or ways they in the end have results. And yeah, it was a pleasure. It was very nice to do this. Thank you.
And thank you, Yannick, also for putting a lot of this information together and working together with the students. This came really, Yannick had the inspiration to do this, and so big thank you also goes to her. All right, I actually forgot to share one thing, but I'm going to share it in the chat. So there's lots of different research also that is happening in the Alvalau region, and recently Alvalau created an infographic with some of the key outcomes that from the University of Alvalau that they had in recent years. I put it in the chat so you can look at it. And hopefully we can continue to exchange knowledge across different research institutions. But yeah, and so that's all. I just wanted to share this infographic so I didn't forget, and you can all take a look at it. 2 things that are coming up. One thing is we have an event on March 8th. That's also the International Women's Day, but it has nothing to do with the International Women's Day. It just happens to be on the same day. We're organizing a small 4 returns in a nutshell event for all people who want to learn a little bit more about our approach. And there you can ask questions about the approach and everything that you've been wanting to ask. And then on the 23rd of March, I'm going to add links in the chat in 1 second. We're going to have another community of practice session about women in landscape restoration, because March is, of course, the International Women's Month. And it centers around this idea that, of course, if we want to do landscape restoration, we need to get women involved and have women involved in the decision-making processes of the restoration project. So that's the main topic, but there's still going to be a lot more information to follow. And yeah, we'll send more details in a little bit. So if you just stay 1 more minute, I will just post the links for the events. One moment. I just realized I don't have the link yet for the event on March 23rd, but you'll all get an email and you can see it there. But I do have the one that's happening on March 8th, and now it's in the chat. And with that being said, thank you all for joining. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Yannick. Thank you, Bart. Thank you, Enya, for contributing and also offering your time and sharing your valuable lessons learned. And
Thank you, Elena, for organizing.
Of course, it was such a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.